All right, good evening, everybody. At this time, if you're able to rise, please do so for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, at this time, I will open up the first hearing and privilege of the floor, which is scheduled for 30 minutes. If you'd like to address the board, please just step up to the podium. Let us know your name and address. Adhere to our 5-minute policy. The floor is open.
Good evening. My name is Karen Bradley, and I live right down the street here at 204 Wren Street. My husband David and I have raised 3 daughters who attended Sacandaga School, which was twice decorated a National School of Excellence while they were there. They graduated from Scotia-Glenville schools in 1999, 2001, and 2005. I believe they had a first-class education due to the dedicated teachers they had, whether excelling in AP classes or needing reading services in high school along with a 504 plan. Scotia-Glenville provided what they needed. 2 of our girls have chosen to purchase a home in the district and to raise their family. I have 2 grandchildren that attend Glen Warden, one of whom went through the county committee on preschool special education and was able to begin receiving services at the age of 3, partially in-home and partially at her nursery school. Then, when she entered kindergarten in the fall of 2020 during COVID, she was able to have a plan already in place for her to continue to receive services. It has been proven that early intervention is crucial for a child's success in school. The teachers at Glen Warden have been exemplary and go above and beyond every day, educating the children of our district. I hope you all know that last week was Teacher Appreciation, Teacher Recognition Week. If you're on social media at all, or if you visited one of our buildings last week, you would have seen how much the parents of this district treasure and support our teaching staff. The budget vote, as you know, is May 20th, and I'm aware from attending many of the meetings or viewing them online that we are a bit over the tax cap, and we need a 60% majority to pass this budget. The district's decision was to put children first. The consequences are significant if it does not pass. I'm preaching to the choir here, I know. As seniors on a fixed income, my husband and I looked at our home assessment, which is $199,000, and we've calculated that our school tax increase will cost us just an additional $15 each month. We believe, I'm stuck here together, it is well worth the investment in our schools. If we must go out for a second vote, I ask that you prioritize academics, support services, and our teachers. Put them first in making the tough decisions. I'd like to thank the administration and the Board of Education for providing a great deal of information that our community has been asking for and taking time to answer many of the concerns that our residents have been expressing over the past months. There's much work to be done to strengthen the educational foundation of the district and to begin to examine why we have dropped to a 73% graduation rate. I urge you to include our teachers, our parents, and the community at large, including us senior citizens, in the process. As the board education candidate Mike Torelli, who I think is here tonight, he reminded us about Tartan Pride, and I love seeing those signs around our community. I would also like to thank the grassroots Scotia-Glenville Voices for Change community group, which includes concerned parents, retired educators, and senior citizens in the community and the leaders of that group. You've been very supportive of the group as they've asked for information. They've held one meeting already, and some of you were there, and they're having another meeting on Thursday evening at 6 p.m. at Glen Warden this Thursday. And so if anyone out there has questions and really wants to understand the consequences of what a no vote would mean to this district and the children, I just urge people to take the opportunity to come out. It's like a last chance before the vote. This is a priority for the group at this time. As we got together, it was like, it's all about the budget. Even though various people had concerns of other nature, it's like, it's all about the budget. So I do encourage people to come out on the 15th, this Thursday at 6. And again, thank you for making time. There's been a lot of questions that have come up, and I know each of you in your time have answered the phone or emails or been stopped out in the community. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. If there's no one else that wishes, okay. Mr. McDermott.
Good evening. Mike McDermott. I live at Riverside, 905 Riverside Ave in Scotia. I really hadn't prepared a speech as effective.
I would be here all night.
Right. But I would like to say one thing, and that is that in today's Gazette, there's a letter to the editor about our school budget from a person who is a longtime critic of a lot of the decisions that have been made regarding the school district. Doesn't mean that he doesn't have the right to have his opinion, but I looked at that letter pretty carefully, and what I would say is that he knew how to make a simple point, get to it, keep his message simple, frankly, even if he had to twist the facts a little bit, but he knew how to get that across very quickly. And there's a lot of people in this community who still read the Schenectady Gazette and are going to rely on the information that they read in the Gazette. Hopefully, in the next 10 days, we have some other letters to the Gazette that are expressing a slightly different view. There was a number of things that he didn't mention in his letter, which basically was saying how much the cost per pupil has increased in the last 25 years. And then there's some inaccuracies when he talked about taxes and how the average homeowners pays for their entire house in a 20-year period. There's a lot more to it than what he has written, and I think most of you are probably familiar with it. But I would say the lesson that I would get from reading that letter is keep things simple, let people know what the impact of the budget is on our kids' and grandkids' education. And hopefully that can convince 60% of the people that bother to go to the polls to say yes on the budget. Thank you.
All right, if there's no one else at this time, we'll close the first hearing and privilege of the floor. Remind everyone that we have one at the end of the meeting. And at this point, we have a presentation on grammar. So I will turn it over to the folks that are presenting to us tonight.
Carrie. I'm also the K through 5 ELA coordinator.
Hi everyone, I'm Marissa Gordon. I'm the academic head of English and Social Studies at the middle and high school.
So we are here to share some information on grammar tonight. Our learning targets are to review current practices surrounding grammar instruction, K-12, as well as to discuss next steps and areas for growth as we help students to become proficient writers. So just to identify specific definitions, grammar is the set of rules for how a natural language is structured as demonstrated by its speakers or writers. And when we refer to curriculum, we're referring to a standards-based sequence of planned experiences where students practice and achieve proficiency in content-applied learning skills. An example specifically is No Red Ink, which is writing-focused but not exactly grammar-specific. And then also wanted to just relate and mention how students are experiencing written language. It is not just in published text that they read, but now currently there is a lot of exposure and experience through text messaging, email, and the use of AI. And just to think about what that looks like when you text, when you receive text, it's not always written the same way you would write a formal letter or a paper. As you were taught in school. So students are having experiences writing in a lot of different ways.
We wanted to demonstrate that through our AI platform that we have here at Scotia-Glenville. And this is just a snippet so you can see how students are able to use this, especially when it comes to practicing grammar and editing their own writing. But if you look at the top there, I included a statement that says revise the following paragraph and fix grammatical errors. And the errors that are included in the paragraph are tense shifts and subject-verb disagreement. So then AI was able to give me a revised version of that paragraph. I still didn't really like the revised version, so I asked it to revise the paragraph again with less commas and more periods. So you can see that as students become more proficient with this tool that we're affording them, they can help improve their own writing. We often talk about in our English classrooms that AI is a skill in using it effectively, and we often talk about the phrase junk in, junk out. You really have to be proficient with how to prompt it to give you what you're looking for, so that is a skill that we're working on with students in our classrooms as well.
We wanted to highlight some of our assessment data. So this is looking at our performance with students that are considered proficient, scoring a level 3 or 4 in grades 3 through 8 on the New York State ELA assessment. The first column are the percentage of proficient students at Scotia-Glenville. In the middle, it shows the percent proficient in BOCES. And then at the end, it shows the number out of those 11 like districts that we outperformed or tied in terms of our overall proficiency. And those local districts are comparable because they are similar in size, location, enrollment, and poverty level, just to show that our students really are overall performing fairly well on the state assessments.
And we should note too that it's a bit of a challenge to get data specific to grammar, largely because it falls in a lot of our writing rubrics as a piece of the whole score when we're looking at it. So we put this together just so you can see how our students are performing across a spectrum of skills related to writing as a whole. But if you take a look at this next slide, this is our high school data. So I included all of our exams that fall under humanities. So you can see that first chart is all of our AP courses that fall in English and Social Studies. And you can see the green, we outperformed New York State on every one of those exams. Getting a 3 or a higher on an AP exam is pretty challenging. And I'm very proud of the scores that we have on those exams. Our teachers work really hard to prepare students. And if you take a look at the New York State Regents chart below it, proficiency rate is a 65 or higher on the exam passing. Mastery is 85 or higher. So you can see global and U.S. history are a little bit lower in terms of mastery rates. However, the social studies exams have a lot of content knowledge, whereas English is skill-based. So you can see there under the 23-24 mastery, our students on the English exam performed at 50%, 22-23, 56%, and outperformed or tied 8 out of 10 of those local districts. So again, our students are really faring quite well on our English Regents exam, which is kind of the ultimate testament to what they've learned throughout all of their English coursework, because we only do have one Regents exam offered in that content area specifically. So like I mentioned, it's a little bit of a challenge to just peel back the layers on how our students are doing specific to grammar, because it is only one piece of our writing rubric. On the English Regents, we have 2 types of essays. We have an argument essay, which is a 6-point rubric, and we have a text analysis essay, which is a 4-point rubric. So what I did was I went through the 175 students between June 24, August 24, and January 25, and I did it by score on the rubric, just so you can see the percentages of where our students are falling. So this, honestly, I was a little surprised by this in a positive way, that 70% of our students were scoring a 4 or higher on the Part 2, and 75% of our students were scoring a 3 or higher on Part 3. So that really speaks to what our teachers are doing in the classroom to prepare them for this exam. And like I said, there's 4 different categories on that rubric, and grammar is a piece of that puzzle. When it comes to grammar instruction, there's really 2, I would say, pieces of research that everyone else has kind of built their more recent research upon, but McQuaid and Weaver are kind of the 2 schools of thought that grammar instruction has to be contextualized and meaningful within students' reading and writing. So both of their studies found that discrete learning of, what we call like a skill and drill type mindset of grammar rules isn't really effective for students, because it doesn't translate to them commanding it in their written work that they're doing, their communication. So teaching students through the things that they're reading and writing is more beneficial. And we often refer to that in the classroom as authentic reading and writing. So again, minimizing technical terminology, maximizing the use of examples, encouraging students to discuss and investigate the use of language as they're reading and writing. And this year, just because I knew we were curious about this topic, having brought it up last year, I kind of just kept a tally to myself of when I would go into a classroom, whether it was a formal announced observation or an unannounced observation, where these grammar organic conversations kind of came up. And of the 50+ observations that I've done this year, I observed that happening 21 times. So, and that's just like organic things coming up in conversation as students are reading, as they're writing, not a planned, skill and drill type activity. Of course, I'm sure we've both seen those types of things happening as well. But again, I think that's a really positive thing that teachers are making space for that in their classrooms on a daily basis. And a really popular podcast that's out right now, a plug for it if you're ever bored in the car, has a lot of great topics. It's called Cult of Pedagogy. But one of their most recent episodes that came out in March was centered around grammar instruction, and the episode's titled Why Grammar Instruction Stinks and How We Can Change That. So it's very fitting for this particular presentation. But the person who's interviewed on the podcast published this book which I'll talk about, but we're actually going to purchase it for all of our teachers, 6-12 in English and social studies, because it does have a lot of cool, kind of unique ways of thinking about grammar instruction. And the author of the book refers to grammar instruction being the skunk at the garden party of language arts, which is really true for a lot of students, right? When they're sitting in ELA class, you know, we're trying to keep them engaged in whatever we're reading as a whole group. So, you know, throwing in grammar as a skill and drill activity isn't the most engaging thing for students. So this book kind of speaks to how do we keep engagement levels up when we're talking about a topic like grammar. And again, what does that mean in practice? I'm going to be a little self-deprecating here, because if you look at your printed version, it might look slightly different than what's on the screen. That Mr. Bednarik and I went back and forth about a grammatical question surrounding singular possessive form and plural possessive form for about 45 minutes today. So I think I think that speaks to, you know, grammar is nuanced, it's challenging. You know, we had a really nerdy discussion about, and he ended up calling his publisher friend who gave us an answer of, we were both correct depending on if you use MLA versus Chicago style. So, but in terms of talking about, you know, I put up a grammatical lesson that might be happening in an English classroom about colons. So I used to teach a Christmas Carol, and the opening line to that story is really powerful. It grabs your attention using a colon. So Marley was dead to begin with. So I could have a 10-minute conversation with my students about why is this line so important, right? Who's Marley? Why are we starting the story this way? How did he die? Why is this important to the greater scope of the story? And to begin with, why are we starting that way? Versus a colon is used to give emphasis, present dialogue, introduce lists. Now here's this worksheet on if you're doing it correctly or not. So that's kind of the difference between making it a little more memorable, and hopefully students will kind of use that in their own writing to grab someone's attention in the future, versus a worksheet that they might not remember down the road when they're practicing those things in their own writing.
So just wanted to share an overall trend as it relates to reading and writing. The National Assessment of Educational Progress long-term assessments has shown that for decades, more than half of all 9-year-olds reported reading for fun almost every day. And then in 2012, that figure was 53%, and in 2020, 42%, and now in 2022, down to 39%. And so in 2022, the share of 9-year-olds who never or hardly ever read for fun was at its highest, 16%. And think about the connection between reading and writing. Students who read more have more exposure to text, the way grammar should be presented, and then can transfer that in their own writing. And the less exposure they have, fewer opportunities they have, and then that is also having an impact overall in their writing. So we've been talking about where grammar fits, both within instruction, and that comes from our standards. So at K through 5, we have an anchor standard, which is one of many standards for ELA, but the piece that includes a component about grammar. And what is a little bit different about the anchor standard is that it is cross-grade level. So in ELA, at every grade level, they have specific standards by grade level. So kindergarten, first, second, all the way up. But the anchor standards cover 3 grade levels at a time, and they're meant to be progressive. So what you can see for the first list of skills, it's that students are expected to show proficiency with that by the end of 2nd grade. And if you read through some of them, you can see how they build upon each other. I know the font is really small, but an example is where students begin to print upper and lower case letters in their name, and then they move on to writing many letters, and then they print all uppercase and lowercase letters. But then those skills build upon each other as you move down the list as kids move through second grade. And then the second box explains the same thing for third through fifth grade, that it's not a specific set of skills per grade level, but rather a progression. And you can see then how the anchor standard for grades 3 through 5 builds upon the skills that were an area of focus K through 2.
And we did realize that the font was really small, so you do have an additional packet that has those anchor standards printed if you'd like to look through it with a normal size font there. But additionally, 6 through 8 standards and 9 through 12 anchor standards are essentially the same. I would say English is really the only set of standards that we have that very much starts off in kindergarten, and you will see the same standard all the way through a student's educational career. It just builds on each other a little bit each year. And I think that's probably the only content area that has that situation. And we actually found it really interesting when we were talking about our writing rubrics, which we'll talk about in a second. You know, the difference between a student in third grade and what we're looking for and a student in 11th grade and what we're looking for. But all of those skills that were just mentioned, the expectation is the same when they go to middle school, just that they're able to kind of use them more effectively with maybe a little more pizzazz, I would say. Like, we hope that as students write more, they get to know themselves as a writer stylistically and can learn to incorporate those fun grammatical things on their own to make their writing unique from somebody else. And in 9 through 12, you'll actually notice that's the smallest list. So we're kind of hoping at that point that students come to us from middle school being able to, you know, complete a sentence, know when letters need to be capitalized, etc. And this was the thing that we found most interesting.
As we were sharing before about the assessment scores, there isn't a way to pinpoint how students are doing specifically on grammar because it is not a discrete skill that's assessed by itself. And where it lives is within the writing rubric, which includes several components. What you see here is the piece about control of convention. So when a student is graded on their writing using the rubric, there are different parts of the rubric about the content and how it meets the expectations, but this is the one piece that addresses control of conventions. And if you look at what those scores are for both third grade and then all the way through 11th grade, the language is virtually the same for students scoring, you know, the highest level of a 4 down to a 0, and it really is about the grade level appropriateness and the way that they are demonstrating their command of English language, including grammar and spelling. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what grammar looks like in the K through 5 curriculum. A reminder, we do use Wonders. What I did not put in here that I should probably speak to just for a little bit is that we also use Foundations K through 2, which is primarily a phonics instruction program, but it does address a little bit of grammar as students move into first and second grade, specifically because they start working on nouns and plural nouns and suffix s, and that's where those types of things fit as more of a discrete skill. But overall, in terms of grammar within Wonders, I gave you an example of first grade. There is a daily lesson in all K through 5 in Wonders. They are meant to be very short. And this is, again, I guess, what Marissa was speaking to, that sort of drill and skill, that specific explicit instruction. And there's either online practice through games, or the next slide shows a fourth grade example where we do have some printed worksheets that students can use. So that's what some of the explicit grammar instruction looks like, but the vast majority of grammar work is done organically through their writing.
And like Tanya just did, I just wanted to point out some things that we're doing at the middle school and high school We actually, as a department, kind of put together a list just so we could see what everyone was doing in their own classrooms to find some commonalities. So these were kind of the common things that we're seeing throughout middle school in English class as well as social studies, which is great. Literacy is everybody's job. So mini lessons and entrance tickets on, common grammatical topics like punctuation, capitalization, writer's resource packet they give at the beginning of the year, which students can use in any of their content area classes. So it provides things like transition words and sentence starters, so they can use that wherever they're doing writing. Parts of speech practice in 7th grade, they do an activity, it's called Own the Word. So their vocabulary that they are learning along with whatever they're reading, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, it serves as a vocabulary study. So speech, capitalization, punctuation, they use it in a sentence. Teachers will model strong writing so that students can see what their own work should look like. On the contrary, they also might pull pieces of student work that has some mistakes so that kids can edit and see how they could improve. Teacher-student writing conferences are very common, happening very frequently, one-on-one. And then also important to note, we do very much value students' writing ability, and students applying for honors, humanities classes, they do have to complete a writing sample as a part of that application process for grades 8 through 10. And then, as it should be in 9-12, a little more complexity, but approaching grammar and punctuation primarily through the written responses of students, modeling focus lessons for the entire class to help improve writing, Greek and Latin root words, and then our AP language class, our AP literature, and college composition, they all have larger units of study that are dedicated to grammar and writing style.
So in terms of next steps that include our look at grammar, but also just overall with ELA, we are in the process of updating our elementary report cards. Part of that is through the transition to a new student management system. So with School Tool, we were looking at creating new report cards that are still tied to the standards, but not such a ridiculously long list, while also being parent friendly. And pieces of this obviously will show up in writing particularly. And we are always looking to increase writing opportunities for students. Specifically, 2 ways that that's happening right now is one with our ELA curriculum committee, K-5. We are looking to identify specific common writing assessments. So we have a variety of writing assessments in Wonders. We have a lot of other writing components that teachers do throughout the year based on science and social studies and different content. And so what we're looking to do is align that across 4 buildings and pick, a certain number of specific pieces that we will use as a common assessment, and then align them vertically as they relate to argument and informational writing. And then we would use those rubrics that we showed you in terms of how to score them. And that's also happening through the curriculum map work that we are doing as well. So that's where those 2 pieces live.
And like I mentioned, over the summer I'll be purchasing that text for teachers at the middle and high school and the English and Social Studies department so that we can take a look at that as a group throughout the year next year. As Tanya mentioned, our teachers are working incredibly hard on a very challenging task of putting together curriculum maps so that we can look at them vertically and horizontally. I'm happy to report that at the secondary level in our 2 departments, we are very close to what I would call done with that initiative. However, a curriculum map is always like a living document. It should always be updated. So for having what we need on paper at this point, we're in very good shape for the most part. So our goal next year, 6-12, will be looking at those maps vertically. So what are students, expected to master in 6th grade versus 7th grade, 8th to 9th, 9th to 10th, and having that on paper for teachers to actually look at is a really powerful tool. And Tanya and I are hoping in the next year or two that we'll be able to do that K-12. That would, be very valuable for our secondary teachers to sit with our K-5 teachers, because there's not a lot of opportunity for them to do that at this point in time. So we're hoping that we can make that happen. Again, working with students to utilize Magic School AI, really powerful tool. My teachers in the English department and the social studies department have really jumped into that, and I know Tanya has a few people in her building too across the district that have really been, putting themselves out there and trying things to share with colleagues. And, even if I always tell people, like, organized chaos is okay if you're trying something for the first time. That's how you learn. So continue to do that work. Explore professional development opportunities surrounding writing instruction for staff. I think it's always good to get a refresh and figure out things that are working in other districts perhaps more effectively than what we're doing. I've been in contact with some other local districts to kind of get a pulse on what other places are doing. So in the future too, hopefully over the summer, spend a little time exploring programs like No Red Ink, which a few local districts are using too, that I spoke with, and both kind of reported it's a little clunky and teachers kind of take and pull things from, different pieces of it, but there are a few different programs out there. Of course, we would need to evaluate, is it cost effective? Does it have proven results? And then see if there's a possible pilot group. So those are things that over the summer we'll kind of start to explore. And then, of course, continue to encourage our students to read, whatever that looks like, whether it's a magazine, a book. Reading is critically important to them on their journey to academic success. And that's it from us. If anyone has any questions. Sure.
So earlier in the presentation, you used a cross-section for EP, demographic. Do we have an idea of what the digit and population looks like?
So that would be the English Regents
Okay.
exam, and our students who take the AP exam, so the AP language and comp students, they also take the English Regents. They're 11th grade year, so they take the Regents in January and then the AP exam in June. But if you look at under that New York State Regents chart there where it says English 11, that's our entire student population. So you can see our proficiency rate, so that's passing for 23-24 was at 92%. Our mastery rate, so that's 85 or higher, was 50%. And we outperformed or tied 8 out of 10 local districts when it came to proficiency rate, and outperformed New York State on all 3 of those exams. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much for putting this together. I really, really appreciate it. It's very interesting. I'm interested in this Magic School AI. When it changes the information that you put in with the grammatical errors and you get something that's hopefully grammatically correct, does it explain why the change?
I will be honest, in the chatbot feature of it, no. In terms of there's about 1 million different tools that you can use within the platform. I haven't explored it enough to know if there's an explanation feature. However, I would say that's a piece of the puzzle. Like, no teacher is saying, plug it into Magic School AI and see what it comes up with. There's kind of an editing cycle, at least at the secondary level, that happens. So students might peer edit their work first, then they might meet with a teacher one-on-one, then they might put like their final product into Magic School AI to say, is there any spots that I could increase clarity and fix grammatical errors? And just like I did, I didn't like what it came up with. And we actually have polled quite a few of our upper level students in classes that are using Magic School AI, and it's really interesting what some of them say. Like, well, I just didn't like that it, took what was my thoughts or, my writing style and changed it. So a lot of them at the upper levels, especially in college comp this year, I observed a lesson where the students were kind of going back and forth about their chosen research topic, and Magic School AI was serving as like the counter argument. So they were typing in what their argument was, and the computer was kind of arguing back at them with the counterpoints. And this wasn't necessarily connected to grammar, but it was interesting to hear their thoughts that it helped them come up with ideas of like, okay, well, this is my viewpoint on it, or stylistically, here's how I want to talk about it. So I don't necessarily know that explanation piece is there, but it's a small piece of the editing process, I would say.
Yes, I would share too, not that Magic School necessarily explains, but an example of how we've used it at the elementary level. Some of our 5th grade classes were practicing writing some of their essays, and they would then input the 4-point rubric, the writing rubric, and ask Magic School to assess their writing or tell them what a level 4 would look like in comparison to what they did, and then they use it kind of as a side-by-side to see what was different or where they could improve. So it's not that it's giving them explicit instruction, but it's giving them an example text to compare to that would be considered at that more proficient level.
So do they
I might also add that it actually it does provide a little bit of the why behind edits. I may or may not have used Magic School to proofread some of my own communications that I send out. And so for a district-wide email that I sent, I asked it to edit for grammar, and it did so. And under like the why, it says these adjustments include adding periods to the end of bullet points for consistency and making slight grammatical changes for clarity. So it does provide some of the why.
Oh, good. Do these students have the access to the AI on their own, or is it solely in the school that they're using it? And I ask that question because I find this interesting, because at my agency we're actually creating rules against the use of AI and when you should and should not be using it. So I'm just curious if we're doing something similar as well in the school, because I know colleges have issues with AI and when you can and a lot of times when you can't use it. Like I said, my agency, we're basically behind the grade on businesses and companies on when you can and cannot use the AI. So I just was wondering, are we doing something similar here to kind of give the students an idea of, AI is not necessarily the go-to?
Yeah, so it's on our student Chromebooks, so they're able to pull up the program. I would say we've kind of referred to it in discussions with teachers as well as like AI with guardrails, because it is a school-based platform. It's a really powerful tool, but I think what a lot of our teachers are doing too is showing the pitfalls of it, which I think makes them, a more responsible user. We've kind of had the conversations within my department. It's out there and it's readily available. We'd rather give them a tool with those guardrails that they can use instead of them going on to ChatGPT and using it freely. And I think it's a balance too, right? Like in the humanities department, we very much still, for certain assessments, will have students, unless they have accommodations, pen and paper, because we want to make sure we're assessing those the skills that they can do completely on their own, whether it's a test or a CRQ in social studies, something like that. So I think there's a delicate balance of when they use it and when they don't, but from the teachers in my departments that have been using it, I think it's a cool tool, and some of the features are things that you would never even think of, like interviewing a historical figure. So kids were able, I observed one of the AP US history classes, they had to pick a reformer, and they built a resume as that reformer using Magic School AI, and then they did a round table where they were interviewing each other with their resumes. So some really cool stuff that they can do creatively that they wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to without that tool.
Right.
I have a question. How many years have we been using the Wonders program, and do the teachers still feel it's relevant for our students today?
Yep, we started in 2015, and then we updated it with the 2023 version. We actually did that in 2022, it's just the newer version was out. And yes, I think we certainly still think it's relevant. There are things that, especially through the curriculum mapping process, there isn't any one thing that's going to provide all of the pieces. It is, a large part of our ELA curriculum, but we are specifically, we teach it differently with foundations for phonics instruction. Right now with curriculum mapping, we're specifically pulling apart pieces of the phonemic awareness and where is it in Wonders and what do we need to add to make it more robust and things like that.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's very interesting. Thank you.
All right, so at this time I'll turn it over to Superintendent Schwartz.
And we're not going to discuss planning for a potential second budget vote tonight, but I do have 3 other items I want to cover. So the first is a recognition by the New York State School Board of Kimberly Talbot and the Board Excellence Program. So Kimberly is receiving a certificate as well as a free class, as well as this very nifty, which I tried to take, but Jill assured me was for you. So congratulations to you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
The second thing I want to make folks aware of is I had the opportunity to meet today virtually with 3 representatives from the New York State Department of Early Childhood Education to talk about UPK funding and apparently what is a novel idea. I'm surprised by this, but this notion that 3 school districts, Burnt Hills, Niskayuna, and ourselves, would join together to offer UPK as a single entity. I had the representative for our area, I had the finance person for our area, and then one of the people who leads that department. But the financial person explained to me that they only have one other school district that they think is partnering with the second school district. So I found that very fascinating because, of course, the push from the governor's office back to Mr. Cuomo and certainly through Governor Hochul has been regionalization. But I had many questions about how this will work for us that they couldn't answer because nobody's tried to do this. So I think that is fascinating. But I also would share with you that they were very positive about what we're trying to do in our efforts. And I'm back to believing we might be able to start with 4 UPK classrooms, one that would be technically Burnt Hills, 1 Niskay, potentially 2 of ours once we get some of these additional questions they had for me today and I have for them. And we can get moving on that. So I'm thrilled about that. I've been working on that a bit. And then I just wanted to let folks know that we are going to be able to sit down with Chief Janik and the comptroller on Monday the 19th to talk about our current SRO contract. So I'll have some information after that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, and yes, thank you for reminding me. Mr. Arquette's going to talk about weighted grades.
So after our meeting on the 23rd, Principal Ben Derrick and I took the presentation and provided it to the high school faculty. We gave an abbreviated version of the presentation to the teachers at Pete's May faculty meeting. We had a good conversation about it. Then we provided a survey to the faculty. And the response rate was high. Over 90% of the faculty responded to the question of what their opinion was on weighted grades. And the majority of teachers were not in favor of implementing a system of weighted grades. It was 63% of those respondents were not in favor. So my recommendation to Superintendent Schwartz and the Board of Ed is that we do not proceed with a form of weighting for next school year.
Mr. Arquette?
I had asked at the last meeting when you had provided the list of districts that do it and the districts that don't do it, if you had had any discussion with them at that point regarding why they chose to do it and its success, or why they chose not to do it. And I was just curious, did you have an opportunity to do that since I asked that question?
No, I didn't know there was a specific question regarding that.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to find out the districts that did it, if they had positive results, negative results. I just think that would be something people that are actually districts have actually utilized it, what their thoughts are on how it's working.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our reports and updates. Kim Furnish, Legislative.
Yes, and we have a budget, so there actually was a lot of school pieces to it. There was a minimum of a 2% increase in the foundation aid, which I think Drew pretty much was guessing that was going to happen, so no surprise there, thanks to Drew. The state is now fully funding our universal school meals, so I'm not sure how that affects us since we already had them funded through 2028, if that makes any changes for us, but it doesn't matter. No matter what, our kids are going to still get the free lunch, which is great.
Yeah. And that's a good question. I put that question out there to our consultant. We don't know yet because it's so fresh, but
Right.
I'll update you when I find out.
Okay, great. They did make some formula changes to the foundation aid. I thought the biggest piece I thought was interesting, and I'm glad to see it, is that they're no longer using the 2000 census for the poverty and data in order to make the formula changes. I think it's a good idea considering we're in 2025. And then they're now making using the small area income and poverty estimates for determining foundation aid. But I did find it a little disappointing that the increase was really only $30 million. Which sounds like a lot in the grand. It sounds like a lot until you see what the actual numbers are, and you're like, 30 million really was not much of an increase, unfortunately. The other piece I thought was interesting is they dealt a lot with the EV bus situation. They, of course, did not dismiss it, as we would at least I would have hoped, but they did extend the commissioner's authority to grant district by district 2-year waivers. If we wanted, you could go for 1, but now you can go for 2, so you could try to get it pushed back 48 months. They also extended what the commissioner can consider to any factors that are essentially outside the district's control. They also are requiring all the bus dealers that they have to provide the battery range estimates for their buses. And they have to show weather, they have to show terrain, they have to show, mileage, they have to show are the buses inside or outside when they're being stored. And I know that's actually been a lot of questions that we've had. I know that's a lot of questions the community has had. So I was really happy to see that these dealerships are going to they're being required by law to provide that information. And I think, please do, please.
So on the EVs, it was the final part of the budget that got in, and this extension or waiver, you have to apply for it. You have to show that you've made an effort towards this process. So, like for our instance, we're in process of an electrification plan. We're trying to get that approved. We've got a proposition. We've had an EV study done, bus study done. So we could probably, apply for that and maybe be successful. But I don't know what the application is. It's so fresh. But it's all coming because the Central New York had propositions voted down. They voted down in Central New York buses and EV infrastructure work. So the state's reaction is to give you a deferral, basically, right?
Yeah, and I think two things they also added in addition to other factors outside control is the availability of the buses. And I know that's, obviously a huge issue, Drew, you've been dealing with. And so, not everybody's going to get a bus. It is what it is, and we can't manufacture it, but not out of thin air with the parts and everything. So that definitely can be used in consideration if we decide to apply for a waiver. And then the funding behind the infrastructures as well. And then the big thing, I think, other big thing was cell phones. We have to have a policy by August 1. We have to include in that policy the method to store on site, one or more methods for the any guardian to be able to contact their students, and written notification has to be given out to the public regarding what that notification process would be before the school year starts. Prohibitions does not apply to cell phones. For example, and this made me think of my mother's flip phone, but if the cell phone does not have access to the internet, you can keep it. If it's provided by the school for educational purposes, health reasons, and in use in an emergency situation. And then starting on September 1 of 2026, every district has to publish a report detailing the enforcement of this rule with their students. The one thing I found a little bit disappointing is that they only gave a little over $13 million for all districts to be able to get in that fund to effectuate this policy. That seems a little light in the pocket to me for what all the districts have to do. Pre-K funding is the same. Special ed funding is the same, and it's been extended to April 1 of 2026. And with mental health, it's been extended to April 1 of 2026 that the schools can bill Medicaid directly for mental health services. And I think Drew has talked about that before, and that's helped us significantly. So I was glad to see that's been extended a year.
Thank you.
So that's all I have. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about the emergency situation?
No, they did not define it.
I wrote define emergency situation.
Yes, I have
okay.
no idea what that means because
Okay.
they didn't define it.
Okay.
Yes.
And you will hear from Mr. Arquette and the cell phone committee in June.
Thanks.
Beautiful. Moving on to PTA Council. Chad, are you taking that one tonight?
Yes, hey, we just got done with my favorite week of the year, Teacher Appreciation Week. Shout out to all my units. They did a phenomenal job from the high school PTSA down to SAC. Everyone did a great job. Thank you so much for that. It was just amazing. Thank you. PTA Council will have our elections on June 18th at the high school, along with our budget approval. A couple events coming up. SAC has their walkabout this week on the 15th. Lincoln have their ice cream social as well on the 15th. Glen Warden will have their glow party on the 16th. End of the month, we've got our kindergarten orientations coming up. And also SAC have a spring carnival on the 30th this month. So wrapping up the year pretty strong for us.
Beautiful, thank you. Audit Committee, we have Audit Committee meeting on the 27th. So mark your calendar, Emily, Kim, myself. Moving on, our Board of Education goals and our policy, that's the last open goal. So Pam, Kimmy?
Yes, we have met again with Kathy Smith, who is made like another copy of the policies in the computer, and she's going through and making all the changes. And when those all get made, they'll fall into two categories. One where it was just language changes, like getting rid of pronouns and stuff like that. And she's also making, which is a much shorter list, thank goodness, of every policy that needs to be changed, because it's no longer the same now as it was when these policies were written.
A long time ago.
We have gone through the zeros all the way through the 6,000s. The 7,000s to 9,000s are done. We just have to find a time now to get together with Kathy to put those in. And then the only thing we'll have left are the appendices.
Beautiful.
And thank you, Kathy, for sitting with us for
Yes.
so long getting those
It's the
done.
favorite part of her day. Thank you, Pam. All right, moving on. If I can get a motion, please, on the resolution to withdraw and amend the school tax rolls.
I'll motion to approve the resolution to withdraw and amend the school tax rolls.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Anyone have any questions or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstain? So moved. If we'd like to, we can motion resolutions 8, 9, 10, and 11. So if I can get a motion for those, please.
I'll make a motion that we accept and appropriate gifts and donations from Box Tops for Education, donation list for various high school award scholarships, a gift and donation list for Sac-and-Daga Drama Club, and gift and donations from Sac-and-Daga 5th grade class as submitted.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thanks. Anyone have any questions or comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? So moved with thanks. Motion for communications, please.
I'll move communications A through H, staffing 1 through 6, placement of students with disabilities, and the regular minutes from April 7th, and special meeting on April 23rd.
Thank you, Pam. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you both. Questions or comments on all that?
I would ask that 13A1 is done separately, please.
13A1, okay. So we can move all
I'll
those.
make the motion
Thank you.
without number 1.
All right. So 13A1 is the motion. Any other questions? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? So moved. Now if I can get a motion, please, for 13A1.
I'll move the Board of Education approve the 2025-26 salary list rates and stipends for the management confidential employees as submitted.
Thanks, Pam. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Chad. Any discussion or questions on this?
Were we not moving this? This is a tonight?
Yep, we're going to vote on it tonight, yep. No other questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed
Nay.
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 or abstain? All right, so I believe that's 3 and 3, right? All right, so 13A1 is not moved. All right. Moving on, routine business. Any questions on the budget transfers of April 2025? All right, so move. Other business? Anyone have any questions or comments on the health and safety meeting minutes for April of 2025? All right, anyone else have any other business they'd like to talk about?
I wanted to talk about two things. One, as an attorney, I was very excited to see that our high school mock trial team won regionals, Schenectady County regionals last week. I thought that was amazing. I've heard amazing things of how well they did. So kudos to them, and they are competing next Monday and Tuesday, I believe, for the state finals, which is taking place in Albany. So I wish them luck, and I have no doubt they're going to make an impressive showing on behalf of the school district. Also, I wanted to mention that one of our Tartan seniors, Kelly Crystal, is nominated for Athlete of the Week by the Times Union. So everybody get out there and vote for her. We want to see one of our own. Getting it for softball. I'm sure everybody heard because it was such exciting news. She pitched a no-hitter, which is amazing. So that's one of the many reasons she was nominated as one of the athletes. So I'd love to see her get it. So good luck to Keely.
Excellent.
I had two things.
Yep.
One, junior Nick Limp just set the goal record in a season at 56 in lacrosse the other night.
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty phenomenal. The old record was from 2023. I think it was 54. So that's pretty awesome. And then an idea, because no matter what, we're going to be welcoming a new member of the board next year or in July.
Yep.
I thought, and just for people to think about, assigning a mentor when we have a new individual come on board, just to help navigate things, best practices, and seen it in other boards, and thought maybe that'd be a great idea for us to think about.
Yeah, we've done that before here. Yeah, as well. Yeah. I don't know when we started actually.
COVID?
Yeah, it probably was during the magical COVID time where things just got a little crazy, but I know we did before. Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Great to bring that up again, absolutely. Anyone else have any other business? All right, at this time, I will open up the second round of hearing and privilege for 30 minutes. If anyone would like to address the board, please just say your name and address. Approach the podium, and you have 5 minutes per person. All right, so we will close the second hearing and privilege of the floor. Just as a reminder, obviously, May 20th, a great day, Election Day. I encourage everyone to get out and vote. As Mrs. Bradley told everybody when she spoke, the board and the district went with a kid-first mentality, and that's why we're all here, to support our kids. I would ask everybody that is on the socials that are saying no to really think about it, to look at it, what we really are doing with this budget, and just not to vote no, because you can vote no to our budget and you can't do it to the village. So that doesn't make any sense to me. But, you know, support our kids like parents supported your kids and your grandkids and your nieces and nephews and all my little football kids. Support all them, right? So please get out and vote next week. It's very important to the success of our school district.
And there's a bake sale.
Great, thank you.
A very good bake sale.
And
As always, just bring your cash.
jury's out on that bake sale. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thanks, Jen. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstained? So moved. Thank you.